Well, and one thing I've noticed, like at least in America, is that the more similar a Christian is to Muslims, the more they don't like Islam. So, like, if there was a Christian who had a giant family and prayed 5 times a day, and whose wife wore like a head covering, right? They would be like very right wing, and they would probably not like Muslims. Whereas if you have a Christian who's super liberal, like wife dresses whatever, and like 0 kids or whatever, then they're like they're very like pro-Islam, like anti-Islamophobia and stuff. And so there was for a while this very strange like left like alliance with Islam, not left, but like more liberal alliance with Islam.
Yeah, worked out great for us.
What's that?
Worked out great for us. Rashida Tlaib voted
Oh
president.
yeah, right. Yeah. And in the last few years, there's been a lot of work done where there's more of like a conservative, like, and part of it is like I want this to happen, and I've been like working to make it happen. Is that like conservatives and Muslims are like allying a lot of times on like LGBT stuff, like in America, which I don't really care about, but like also on like family breakdown issues and loneliness and things like that. And it was interesting. There were all these like, trying to get like all these conservative influencers and stuff. And then it sort of veered into this like weird, like right-wing influencer fetishization of Islam, where there's like this based Islam thing where they're like, they know how to control their women. It was like where it turned into this, like, it was like Islamophobia, but like pro, like it was all the same stereotypes.
It was a fetishization of the stereotypes within Muslim community.
Yeah, 100%. And like, so, but for a while there was this kind of like thing, and then the second that Israel and Palestine happened, it was like that was over, right? Then like all of the like people that I know who are like conservative Christian people were posting like Israel has a right to defend itself. These monsters are like whatever. And I'm just like, okay. Like, but then at the same time, all of the like liberals, like, I don't know, it's very, very, it feels like a rehash of like 2001, where like 2001 happened. And like, it was not until Trump's, maybe like Obama's second term. It wasn't until Obama's second term that there was a real like alliance between Muslims and liberals in America, white liberals. And then like with Trump out of the picture, like, so it just turns out that like liberals wanted Muslims like to fight Trump, right?
Essentially.
And yeah. And they still do, like where like if a Muslim criticizes Biden right now, it's like, well, if Trump wins, he's going to deport whatever, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, but like it's
15,000 Palestinians survived 4 years of Trump, but they didn't. Biden's.
Right.
So
yeah, and
in terms of forever wars,
there's this understanding.
Trump was much better in terms of forever wars. And I'll tell you a secret. A lot of Pakistanis that I know in America, they did vote for Trump. They
100%.
They don't like to admit it, but they did vote for him. Yeah,
that's right.
He was going to drain the swamp. He was the outsider candidate, and he promised no more forever wars. On Israel, you see him a bit. He's being a bit wishy-washy. But then again, because his anti-war stance was never principled, he was simply picking on to the zeitgeist. Sort of the conservative zeitgeist was at that time. It was cool. It was sexy. Being anti-war and anti-interventionist, but unfortunately that circled all the way back to the Schofield Bible the moment Israel decided to kill some kids. And
that's right.
Speaking with just for the audience, we're speaking with Jeremy McLellan. The conversation has started midway because I forgot to press record. Jeremy is a well-known Pakistani comedian, of I know you hate that, but
He likes biryani. Yeah.
We were talking before the recording started. We were talking about how Jeremy had become Flanderized into that one comedian who does
Flanderization. That's such a good reference. Yes.
Yeah. Because
exactly right.
You're neighborly and Christianly, and
exactly right.
Hidely doodly.
That's the TV trope. That's the TV trope of my life. Yeah.
We'll get to that in the thick of the discussion. But Jeremy is an American Catholic comedian. He's described himself as somebody who's erratic and spontaneous, and he can't stick to one particular type of comedy or one particular aspect or a brand. It's not that he doesn't want to be successful or make money. It's just that he feels it artistically unfulfilling. And alhamdulillah, we're happy to see Jeremy back in the zeitgeist with his commentary on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Many of you must have seen the videos. They're very popular on Twitter as well as Instagram. Jeremy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm great. I'm glad I was mad that we didn't record all that stuff, but now we're just friends. We already got to know each other, and so this is better. Yeah.
It genuinely it's an opportunity for me. It's a great honor. I've been seeing you as you're probably Pakistan's best comedian, and we've seen you for the past 5-6 years on and off, but then you sort of fell off with the pandemic, and
sure.
But it turned out for the best, because congratulations on the weight loss, on positioning yourself in terms of your comedy, in terms of your art, and inshallah something good will come out of this. It's very unfortunate, the circumstances under which we're meeting for the first time. I would have hoped to catch one of your comedy shows across Pakistan, except Karachi, never Karachi. So, but unfortunately, these are the circumstances under which we meet. I think that it's very important for the audience as well as the people to remember that levity and comedy can be a breath of fresh air in terms of not only political commentary, but a commentary on the human condition. And I think there's nothing worth exploring more right now with the conflict going on in Palestine than the human condition. Now that I have put an absolute damper on things, Jeremy McLellan, comedian, what would you like to say?
Well, I don't think it's a damper. I think, to me, it's all one thing. I was talking with a friend of mine, Jason Gross, about he's a comedian, and we were talking about like for him, his religion, his politics and stuff aren't like part of his comedy. It's just funny. And for me, it's all one thing. I don't have like different divisions between different things. And I always have wanted that my whole life. I've wanted my inner life and my thoughts to be all one thing, to be integrated. And when it comes to comedy and tragedy, people often react very negatively. They say that, a joke is too soon, or they will use comedy as a way to smuggle like points that they want to make in. And so the way they write is they will have a point they want to make. And so then how do I make it funny in order to get people to do it? And that kind of turns art into propaganda. I'm not a big fan of that. That is oftentimes what ends up happening. But that's not how you write. You shouldn't write like that. When you write comedy, you just are thinking about what's funny. And when it comes to like art and tragedy, I mean, we've all been to funerals where everything's very sad, but people are still making jokes. They're like, the eulogies are funny. They're saying funny things about the person who died, funny stories and everything. And so it's just not true in general that you can't make jokes during tragic times. But the way most people think about it is like you have a hard day, right? You have a hard day, or you have like a bad day at work, or work sucks, right? And that's reality. That's the way the world is. And you need a break from that. You need an escape from that. And so you tell a joke, or you joke around, or you watch a comedy movie or something like that. And I think that gets it backwards. And that's not how I think about it. I think comedy is the real stuff. I think humor is the real like nature of reality. I think, and like, so when you tell a joke at a funeral, if it's a really good joke about the person who died, right, that is more real than their death. I think that is like a breaking in because the world is good. I mean, God made everything good, and the world, like at its basic core, even in horrific situations, at its core is good and loved by God. And when you inject humor into a situation in full view of that tragedy, it has to be in full view of it. You can't just you can't joke. I think when people get mad, it's when you use humor to deflect from like the tragedy of the situation and sort of minimize it or dismiss it. But when you make a joke in full view of that tragedy, then I think that's like the point of life. I mean, like to find joy coming out and like breaking through the reality of like the haze of suffering, and in that way, it's like to see that as more real.
No, I think that's it's very beautiful that if you sort of try to deflect from the tragedy of the event, and if you try to smother it with propaganda, that kind of comedy is out of taste, out of touch, and I think there's a gut feeling that people get that maybe it's not. And you see that with the TikToks that are coming out of the Instagrams that are coming out of the Israeli sort of cultural zeitgeist.
Oh yeah,
insane, by the way. But when you zoom out and you sort of focus on the tragedy as a whole, in fact, the comedy not only ends up adding levity to the situation, but I think it ends up making or highlighting the tragedy of it even more. You know, and it serves as a tool, but not in the cynical sort of sense where you identified that, you know, maybe reverse engineering propaganda into comedy or jokes. That's the kind of messed up, which I think it goes into the uncanny valley, and the average viewer can almost hear the propaganda and then, you know, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
And and I think that really became common in comedy. I mean, it's always been a temptation, but I think it really became the dominant way of doing comedy during Trump, where it was very, very clear. It was so necessary for some reason. It was so necessary for every comedian who made a joke to broadcast the fact that they were anti-Trump, so that you would not think they were a bad person. What's that?
So Orange Man not bad?
Oh yeah, Orange Man not bad. No, well, no, Orange Man bad, but like, but they're all bad. I mean, like it's the like. Orange Man bad's not like a joke. Like it's not a good joke to tell on stage.
I thought
right?
I thought Drumpf was a better joke, making fun of his last name.
Yeah. I'm amazed that didn't work. But like, but that's the thing is that like it became if you made a joke about Trump that was not where like the moral of the story wasn't that Trump is bad. Right. Like it's an after school special. And at the end, you have to be like, you know, we've had a lot of fun today, but you know, it's not fun. It's Trump, you know, and like you had to have that that thing. If you didn't do that, if you were just silly about Trump, like, or you made a joke that, or you just told a joke where it wasn't really clear what your politics were from the joke, then you were like hurting the war effort. You were, and I think that's still true. I think that's still how people write. Where like, and you would get like, I would get writing packets from like you know, network shows that like comedy shows, and it was like, here's a point we want to make. Write a sketch that like, and it's like that's the worst way to write ever.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, I mean, your politics does come through just about, you know, in turn, and like my religion comes through of like where like just because that's who I am, that's my voice, and like your politics will come through in terms of what you care about, like your what your motivation is for doing it.
No, your guilt and self-hatred as a Catholic is very apparent.
Sure, yeah. Well, I didn't grow up Catholic, so I don't have that. I became Catholic like 5 years ago. So like
that's why you have such a big chip on your shoulder.
What's that?
That's why you have such a big
Yeah,
chip
that's
on
right.
your shoulder.
Yeah. Well, so like that's the I forget what I was going to say. Now I'm like my mind's going on like Catholic guilt and whether that's like a real thing or not.
No, I'm
But
messing with you.
like
You were talking about
yeah.
how politics and religion sort of seep through
Oh
your
yeah, like
politics.
that comes through.
Yeah.
But it's not I don't know, like you're not going for claps. You're going for laughs, and laughs are not something that people think about first. Before they decide, like no one decides to laugh at a joke in person. And that's one way why social media is very um, it's such a distorted view. It gives you a very warped view of what's funny, because you're going by likes, and people think before they like something, and so they can think that's funny, but there's always a thing where like you tell a joke in person and someone laughs and then they say, "Oh, that was terrible," and it's like, no, it's too late. You already laughed. Like the joke's over. Like I already got what I wanted from you. I don't care what you think about the joke. You laughed. That's a so but you don't get that online. You don't get that immediate pre-rational reaction that laughter is. Instead, you get either like this is funny, but I'm gonna write a thing where I'm against it or whatever. I'm gonna dissect it and figure out why it's wrong. Or you get the opposite, which is just as bad, where no one laughs, but they're like, "This is really like I think this is a good point." And so then they like and share it to like signal that they like, whatever. And so people, it's always interesting seeing people who like got started doing that kind of humor online and going viral based on that, then come and try and do stand up. And they just get destroyed, they bomb or whatever. Like, which is why it's so important when you're a comedian that you start out doing open mics where like no one has to laugh, and where you have to learn that like to get that immediate feedback.
Yeah, I mean, you can whip yourself and then carry your own cross to every open mic.
Yes, that's right.
And no, it's 2 points there. Before we get to the sort of American tribalism when it comes to even comedy, because your politics seems to, the way the media cycle is in America, it seems to seep into everything. And with the cultural identity stuff, all the social justice stuff, America's gone over the off the deep end compared to Europe or Asia or anyone else in the world.
Right.
Where you have to sort of qualify your comedy in terms of your politics before you are allowed to laugh, and you have to write an email, get approval from HR, and sort of sign off on a document or something. You said that the politics seems to seep through, and that's what good comedy works like. I mean, and you mentioned Trump and Trump mania, and sort of everybody sort of lost their minds. Comedy shows, late night shows were all about, they weren't looking for laughs, they were looking for claps, and sometimes even cries, honestly. They were looking for a good cry from the audience, and that was insane.
That's right.
When you saw multiple, your co-religionist and, fellow Catholic, Stephen Colbert, he used to cry all the time.
And fellow Charlestonian. He's from my city.
No way. He's also from South Carolina.
Yeah. He's from Charleston.
Dude, and the Colbert Report was one of the funniest things.
Funniest things ever,
back in the day, and this guy fell off the deep end. I mean, he made a lot of money, like we talked about earlier. But...
because it was silly.
Because it was silly. So that's what I was saying. That if you look at Shane Gillis and the way he did Trump, he was kicked out of SNL, right? And then he does his own sketch comedy, and
he's done very well.
He's done so well for himself. So I think that there is a room now in the sort of cultural consumption zeitgeist space where people are sort of sick of the sort of there's this one comedian, I don't know if you know about them, this guy Ben Avery. He used to Ben Avery, he's a small comedian. He used to be the producer for the Tim Dillon Show. Now he has his own podcast called the Lemon Party podcast.
Okay.
He makes this joke about how in the Trump era, everybody had a Netflix show. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and Anwar al-Awlaki. You had all these diversity hires getting shows because of the color of their skin, because of their ethnic backgrounds. none of them were funny. And they all got writing
Well,
jobs. They all got acting
yes.
jobs on TV shows that nobody watched. And I think the number one sign for the fact that nobody watched these shows was during the writer's strike. Nobody gave a single shit
that's right.
about any of those shows. I mean, do you watch Matlock or whatever or 24
No.
or you know?
Right.
So how was your experience?
100%.
Like when you spiraled, when you sort of, you know, were propelled by the Pakistani sort of Muslim Arab American space, did you get a lot of writing jobs? Did you get a lot of
No. And part of it is you can have any. This is how I describe it. So, Muslims love conversion stories to Islam, right? Where they have some white guy, especially if you're white, right? If you're white and you have a story, then it's great. And that's because, it's obvious. And every religion loves conversion stories. Like we love. Like if there's somebody who was Muslim who become Catholic, like great. And whatever they say about their past, we're just like, that's probably true. Even if it's not, or even if it's like such a strange, specific situation where like, that's what they're like, and you can say anything about where you were. I think that liberals love conversion stories to liberalism. And the way that works from my, from your situation is, somebody grew up in Pakistan, their parents were ignorant. They had an arranged marriage, and their parents were poor or whatever. And they were Muslim and not a good Muslim. They were a bad Muslim where they took their faith seriously, or, they followed the rules. And but then they either fell in love with a white woman or like a Jewish woman, right? That's the thing. Or they like met a gay guy in college or something, right? And now they can sort of tell the story of them going from a traditional way of life, et cetera, to like the bright shining world of like Los Angeles, and people will eat that up because they believe that is the way that is the direction that history is going. And it's also flattering to them. From my context, it's always, you have to be like this Southern redneck. You have to play up how racist and conservative your parents were. And then, but then you met a Muslim, etc., and you stop being racist. And the problem is, like, my parents were not racist at all, but they were very, very conservative. But I don't have anything bad to say about their like religiosity, etc. And also I'm someone who, as time has gone on, has become more traditional in terms of religion, than before. And I have like Muslim friends where like the story that they are supposed to tell is the one I described earlier. But it turns out that like they're more conservative than their parents, and they do not get hired at all. If you want to get hired, you have to tell that story that I just described. And so when you were saying like all these people got hired to do these shows, they had that story. They were ethnic, they were religious, but they were like if they were a man, they had to be like feminine, or they can't be too swarthy. One of my friends said like swarthy. You can't have swarthy Muslims who are like big and like tall, like strong Arab men. You can't have that. That's too threatening. You have to have like a twink. Like every
we know you're talking about Aziz Ansari. It's fine. You can come out with that.
Right. I mean, and like 50 other people. Like you have to be non-threatening, non-threateningly cute, and like
Brown
like
face for what they were doing. They were doing brown face for white people. They were all doing brown face for white people. That's what they were doing, and they were Yas Queening their way out of Islam straight into Jahannam. And just there was no actual meat to these people. They were just these one-dimensional, Yas Queen type characters, and they had Yas Queen their way straight out of Islam, straight into Jahannam,
right?
And
oh, God.
No, that's perfectly. No, it's really sad to see it. Honestly, sitting here in the global South. And then, and this, by the way, this conservative trend is one of the reasons is that this is so annoying to people that they become more insular in their in their own approach towards their religion and their culture.
For sure, and like when so I had an idea, and like I had like people who were like really interested in it, and I had like meetings with Netflix, with Hulu, with like Amazon, all these people. The idea was it would be a special, and it would be half of it would be filmed like in Pakistan, half of it would be filmed in like the South, and in between, and it would be cut like that, and it would also feature like me going to like churches and mosques and exploring the idea that basically the basic idea was that like conservative Christians, conservative Muslims have a lot more in common than you think, right? And that they're enemies, but they would naturally be friends, etc. Right? And even just saying it right now, I'm like, that's a great idea.
That's hilarious. And I'd watch that.
That's a great idea. They hated it. They hated it because what was the point of it? And I was like, well, they were like, now is the point to get funny. Conservative Christians to be, well, this was what they were saying. They say that now is the point of this to get conservative Christians to be more liberal? And I was like, no. And because for me, interacting with Muslims has made me more conservative in the sense that like in a sort of like healthy competition way, where I'm like they're taking Ramadan seriously, and I'm like, well, I guess I should take Lent seriously too, things like that. Yeah. And so like that, like I'm like, no, they won't become more liberal. But the main thing they wanted to know was like, how will this help defeat Trump? And I was like, well, it won't necessarily. But that was what they wanted. And even now I'm like, that's such a good idea. But they did not like it. And it was because my story wasn't the story they like wanted. They were pushing.
I think it didn't fit within the. It didn't fit the bill. It didn't fit the narrative. Couple of questions. Number one, it makes you really think that why are producers interested in liberal politics when they should be interested in will this thing make money? Will it get butts in seats? Is it gonna be popular? And the other thing is very fascinating. You said that because now they are interested in liberal politics because they don't fit that story, because they don't fit that bill. They're not willing to sponsor something. Andrew Schultz, I don't like his comedy personally. I don't think he's funny. Terrible podcast, the Flagrant 2. He also has one of those twink brown people. What's his face?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous, some Indian guy. And but he did self sort of starter his whole his special, and he didn't sell it to anyone. And the other guy I would say is that the Shane Gillis path is pretty good. So I would say that's an original idea. And we'll get to the experience of the Carolinas and your conservative past and how it colors your comedy. But why do you think that so many producers are so deeply involved with liberal politics?
I don't know. I mean, I think that I don't know. It's an industry that has a groupthink where
you wouldn't say that there's a secret lobby.
Oh, sure. I, I mean, oh, sure. I mean, and I don't
As
even
a
think
Catholic,
it's like,
as a fellow Muslim to a brother Catholic, don't you think that there is a cabal of
yes,
individuals?
yeah, of Jesuits. There's a Jesuit cabal that's run from like the
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 Hollywood
top
Hills.
of yeah, the top of what's it called? Marie, the convent in Marie that trains all the
Yeah.
that teaches all the Pakistani like elite people. Yeah. So no, I mean, but like I don't think that's like nefarious or secretive. It's just that like people advocate what they believe in, and um, it it gets to where like if you I don't know. I mean, like, do they? Yeah, I guess the test would be like, do they leave money on the table because it hurts their cause? I don't know. I think we're finding out whether that's true or not right now with the Israel Palestine stuff, where it's like, is like the Israel lobby in the media, like, are they going to start canceling like successful people, people who are because like right now it's mostly like the people who are getting canceled are getting it's like the bottom is being cut out of the industry in terms of like if you're pro-Palestinian. And the thing about that is like you will never know what opportunities you didn't get. Because it's just people stop calling, or you have a bunch of feelers out and they don't pan out, and you can't. If you complain and you say that if it's a conspiracy, you sound ridiculous. And so who knows? But if there was someone up, who was pro-Palestinian, who had like a thing and then I think, and then got cut. I think that would be the test.
And
If Remy Youssef's show got canceled or something, I think that would be a big sign that they're leaving money on the table, because that's a good successful show that's pro-Palestinian. So
right, and I think George Bush doesn't like black people
yeah,
because you saw with even the upper end. So on the lower end, sure, there's a bottoming out with the industry, and you have smaller stars getting the shows cancelled, getting the the film deals cancelled. I don't know what the girl's name was, the one that had the Scream deal.
Oh, Jenna Ortega.
No, the other one. There was a smaller actress who got cut, and then Jenna
Yes,
Ortega.
and she got cut, and then Jenna Ortega dropped out of Scream because of that.
And so on the lower end, what they can do is they can replace those smaller actors with AI.
Yes.
But on the upper end, I think with people like Kanye, and since we are at cancellation, there's a lot of Kanye is one thing. He genuinely went off the deep end. Yani, unacceptable, insane anti-Semitic. He's saying all sorts of nonsense, and he's become. And I think he has genuine mental problems. I think they shouldn't have cancelled him.
Yes.
I think they should have.
Yeah.
All that liberal gobbledygook that they've been preaching for a few decades. I think maybe should have applied to this poor guy, and
Yeah, for sure.
they should have been concerned about his mental health. So you talked about going woke and then going broke. That's an idea. Go woke, go broke, and and we'll see if that's going to be true in the case of Israel Palestine, because quote unquote going woke seems to be supporting the Palestinian cause or the being against the genocide of the Palestinian people. I think this one has transcended that a bit because it's on both sides of the aisle. You see conservatives as well as people on the liberal spectrum being like, "Oh, this is insane. Yeah. We can't stand by this." But in terms of cancellations, a lot of comedians, Dave Chapelle got cancelled over the LGBT stuff. Mm-hmm. There's smaller time comedians. I don't know if you know them. Someone who's more of a conservative comedian, maybe not such a religious comedian, but a conservative comedian nonetheless. A lot of them in the 2010s were relegated to the alt-right, like Sam Hyde. I don't know if you know about Sam Hyde.
Right. Oh yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I know who Sam Hyde is in Pakistan, right? Which is insane. But the fact that the internet first pushed all these people out, the sort of the mainstream of the internet, even on the internet they were pushed out of the mainstream, and then you had sort of a redemption arc for a lot of these guys through YouTuber boxing and
Sure.
alternative platforms coming up because of the attention economy, the way Twitter has shaped up, the way Rumble has shaped up. Now Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube have to genuinely second guess whether or not they can cancel people because they don't want to lose too big of an audience because there is a dollar, there is a dollar sort of bottom line when it comes to this. So how do you as a comedian, like, how far are you willing to risk cancellation? And because you do talk about touchy subjects, and and what do you think about your fellow comedians who do you think, because there's two ends of the spectrum. You're too funny to make money. There's one idea on one end, and the other end is that you just you're so funny that that the audience can't even handle you, and then you have to get banned. So how do you sort of balance that?
So there's two things with cancellation. So and I've talked to my friends about this, about like what would I get canceled for? Because cancellation there's like two ways you can get ruined. Number one, you can get like all of your fans can turn on you. Like all of your fans, and you can lose all your fans if by saying something or doing something that would really make them mad, right? And the second way is the other way, which is to really make you like your bosses mad. So if you have a TV show, I'm talking about like your viewers, and then I'm also talking about like your bosses. And so whenever we talk about like a cancel culture or like the mob on Twitter or something, what it is someone says something and they have a job or they have like a TV show or something, and people start tagging those people, whatever, and trying to get the person fired or punished for that. Or they, like, so when I'm talking, like when I think about like myself, I don't have a boss. I don't have like anyone who I work for. I don't have a TV show or anything. I could get banned from social media, which would really hurt me if Twitter banned me or Instagram banned me. That would really suck. So I have to pay attention to that. And then on the other hand, like my fans, like even like the people who brand themselves as like offensive or as what is it? Like triggering, right? They talk about like how they're like a triggering comic who's going to trigger everybody, but their fans are not triggered by the things they say. So they're not triggering anyone. They're not actually being offensive because no one in the audience is offended by what they're saying. So like I think it was Joe Rogan had a a special called Triggered or something, and I'm like, that's a trigger warning. You're warning people about that. It's triggering. Like you're doing what they should. He should have called it like Joe Rogan's pleasant night of like LGBT friendly comedy, and then been like really anti-LGBT in it, right? That would have been true. That would have been the anti-woke thing to do. But instead, they have like a brand like that, and it's kind of like. So for me, what would I do? Well, if I were to suddenly become like really anti-Muslim or really pro-India or something like that, or really like anti-Pakistani. Then I would lose a bunch of fans and I would lose a bunch of gigs, like corporate gigs where people book me for like nonprofits and stuff. But that would require me to have a complete change of my mind about something, where I would have to have adopted an entirely different philosophy, almost like a conversion of some kind, Hindutva, where I suddenly believe the opposite. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about saying something that's going to offend my fan base, because like, the only thing I can think of that I would do would be like, so yeah, I get it. I don't even know what I would, I don't even know what it would be.
You don't love Israel, beautiful women.
What's that?
You don't love beautiful women of Israel.
Beautiful women.
of Israel. You don't support beautiful women of
Oh, of
Israel.
Israel. Oh, the IDF like thirst trap people.
That only
Like,
Indians fall for. You know?
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Just the weird parasitic relationship that the IDF thirst traps and the
I know.
Indian bots have developed is hilarious.
It's so strange. But like, yeah, and I don't know why that is. And
Oh, I
yeah.
know why that is. They both
Why
hate
is it?
Muslims. IDF,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
the IDF, you know, and then the Hindutva, the sort of the right wing politics that's going on in India, they love.
Right.
And they've created these like sort
Yeah.
of the IT cells where they have young, you know, really not very bright
Right.
kids working online to just create to be actual internet trolls. Like they're getting paid to professionally.
Right.
So if you, and you can try this by the way if you want to, just mention in your title or in any of your hashtags Kashmir or any of the riots in India or anything.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
gonna get 100 Indian bots are gonna be like they're gonna
For sure.
they're gonna take a massive dump on your video because there are no toilets in India.
Yeah, I had that happen a few I think 5 years ago. I had like a few weeks where it was just a flood of India.
You are love
It was
Mujlim. You are love Mujlim.
it was a camp of the saints of Indians coming in onto my shores. Of my page. So, but yeah, so
No, but you talked about this very fascinating, and I think you referred to it, but I think there's a name for it, the intellectual dark web of comedians.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of navel gazing going on over there about, you know, yeah, man. If you notice that a lot of them are like boomers. A lot of them are like really old.
what?
Are boomers. A lot of the a lot of the you know, the sort of ham fisting their way through the woke era of the 2010s and 20s. Like I mean, they're still talking about cancellation and being triggered and trigger warnings, whereas clearly the culture has moved on.
Oh yeah, 100%.
and
100%.
It's a bit lame. It's a bit. I think it's just that there's something about, I heard some comedian say the other day, I was watching a podcast and they said that being a young comedian is all about hitting on more successful older comedians until you until you become them, right? And
that's right.
I think that there is something very fascinating for me as an outside observer about the sort of the explosion of American, because when I was growing up, I only remember, and again, we watch reruns of these things because Pakistan, because of the technology lag, which was eventually gapped by the internet. Now there's no technology lag. Now there's a one-to-one. So I remember the Chapelle show, George Carlin. Everyone has that sort of teenage sort of phase, the edgy sort of, you know, anti-religion, whatever type phase, anti-government. Bill Hicks definitely is not in the zeitgeist here because I think he's too. He didn't translate well onto the internet, I think. I remember Eddie Murphy, the Chapelle show. Where do you think it's going next? Where do you think the next big silly comedy you think is coming back?
Hopefully, is what coming back?
Silly, sort of goofy, you know.
Oh, I hope so. Comedy. I hope so. I think when it comes to like stuff being that's my wife.
Women
the dog was barking and I said that's my wife.
Women are to be seen, not to be heard. Please tell this woman to be quiet.
That's right. My approach to like what's to like offensiveness is just to ignore it. I think the question of like what's offensive is a really boring conversation. And because all it amounts to, if something is offensive, it means it provokes like an emotional reaction in the audience or in a person. And there's nothing like that's a very like, okay, whatever. But like when like if you say what you believe and if you are like if you focus on that, on like speaking truthfully and communicating well so that what you say is what is communicated, then some of your stuff is going to be offensive to people. That's just how it happens. But that's like what's offensive or what's triggering or what's woke or what's whatever. Those are really bad like divining rods for how to guide your. Like, it's a really bad compass to have for your art. I've always thought like, okay, I have opinions that are offensive, but like I don't have them because I'm trying to be offensive or whatever. And so if somebody wants to talk to me about them, they have to talk about whether something's true or whether something is like effectively communicated or if something's funny enough or if it could be funnier, et cetera. I think like there's much deeper conversations, and I hope there will be deeper conversations about like how we do comedy to make people feel less lonely, or like less alienated. Because I think when someone says something's offensive, they usually mean something deeper. They means that they have a perspective they feel is getting ignored, or the things they love are getting trashed, et cetera. And I think that hopefully we can move past like this irony phase where everything is sort of meaningless, and I really want comedy to be less cynical and more hopeful and more like joyful in the sense of like finding beauty in like what's currently like what currently exists, not finding meaning in something in the future where we are trying to use comedy to make something happen. You have a goal for your comedy where you are, you want to beat Trump or something like that. Where like comedy should be about like what is meaningful now and what you find joy in right now. Something that currently exists that is lovable, that you can sort of expose, prop up to the world so that people can find joy in it. I would love for that to be the case. And I think you are seeing signs of it where I do think people are thirsting more for just like genuine happiness and joy and just like speaking plainly about how like that you love things. I was talking to my wife this morning about Taylor Swift and her not her husband, but her boyfriend, whatever. Like Taylor Swift's dating this this football player. And we were talking about Taylor Swift, not my wife's boyfriend. We're talking about Taylor Swift and the fact that like people are seem very invested in it, but not in like a drama sort of way where they're looking at it and they're like, are they going to break up? Like who said what? Like reality TV show kind of like interest. People are just rooting for them. And I think that like rooting for each other and being excited about each other's success, and being able to find joy in someone else's flourishing we need that. And I think we are starving for that. I think that's the way forward.
So like when you do your funny commentary on the IDF and their silly propaganda videos, sure. what you're actually enjoying in the here and now is the common humanity that I think 5 or 6 billion people have found on the internet.
Sure.
Speaking about the tragedy of Gaza, not to bring it back and dampen the mood, but and like you said, it doesn't dampen the mood because there is something, and I think that your faith, your Catholic tradition informs this that even in this tragedy there is something good to be found, and the goodness is that maybe in 75 years this is the first time that people have sort of in lockstep realized that our politicians don't actually listen to us, and we don't want to finance with our tax dollars in the case of America, this kind of violence. And so necessarily the comedic commentary that you're doing is not necessarily a reverse engineered political propaganda piece, but it's actually just commenting on the humor of the fact that this guy, that number one, Israelis have the worst accent on earth. There is a tunnel. There is a Hamas tunnel. And number two, the fact that reality is so, and you could take a cynical approach. The reality is so dark, and these people have no, the IDF has no humanity when they're talking about the Palestinian people. But I think the fact that, the most successful, interviews has been Basim Yousef's interview with Piers Morgan. So that's somewhere where comedy, without it being sort of, even though some of the jokes and some of the points that he was making were they're a bit contrived, and they had the element of that woke sort of reverse engineered point scoring sort of comedy. But even then, like the organic stuff, it flowed through and it reached if not a billion or 2 billion people, it reached millions of people, and that galvanized a lot of them to actually live in the here and now.
I think a good way of thinking about this is so. Before I became a comedian, I worked with people with disabilities, and I would talk about that on stage. And that was when I had the job. Like, so I would at night I worked with people with disabilities during the day, and then at night I would be discussing stuff and talking about that. And I never had like an argument for why people should care about people with disabilities. That's a weird argument to have, right? Like it would be weird to write like a paper on why people should care about disabilities, because those are my friends. Like, people with disabilities are my friends, and you don't make arguments for the existence of your friends. Like, why is like John like good, or why is it good that he exists? Like, that's a weird thing to do. Instead, in the comedy and joking about that, you're just modeling a better world. And you're modeling that kind of engagement and that kind of those kinds of friendships. And I think you see this, Shane Gillis's recent special, where he's talking about his uncle with Down syndrome. And he's making jokes about like how like you can tell by looking at him that he has Down syndrome in his family. And like all these things, they're jokes about somebody with Down syndrome. They're about Down syndrome. The Special Olympics one, the Special Olympics bit was great. So like all of that is like, when you watch that, you are seeing sort of his relationship and how he interacts with people like with Down syndrome. You're seeing that modeled as in a way that's funny, right? And I think like when I perform on stage, I don't have any like, here's why like Christians and Muslims can coexist, right? I'm just modeling that in public, where I'm just like, this is how you do it. This is how you do it without giving up on your faith, without like watering everything down, so that you all have this common denominator. I think there's a very genuine pluralism that like that influences my or that I hope I'm modeling in public, in my interactions and also on stage. And so I think when it comes to like Israel and Palestine, when it comes to coexistence between Palestinians and Israelis, or between Muslims and Jews and Christians and whatever, that's not something in the future that we hope to achieve one day. That is a thing that currently exists, and like in lots of places, and it's something that has existed before. So we're not sitting here making an argument for like what to do, like at least in comedy. Like, this is not like, when I make jokes about the conflict and stuff, I'm not like here's why a two-state solution is, like I'm not a politician. But what I can do is sort of model the better world that actually currently exists in places, and we just want to see that exist more like, you know, because like I said, like joy and love and all of these things that we fight for, that's not something that exists in the future. I'm not like a utopian eschatological like a person who thinks that like everything now is rotten, but if we do this, it will become good. I think that's a really destructive way of thinking about the world and history and politics. But rather, everything that I believe like we should do currently exists in its infancy or in just small places. So you have to model that.
You alluded to the sort of eschatological obsession that both, actually, all three of us, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, have. Jews maybe with their Zionism, Christians, well, with their more the evangelist types, I think, have the obsession with the end times, and Muslims have their own sort of end times fascination, but maybe, you know, as aware.
The difference is like that's God doing it. Like we have an understanding. Well, hopefully, there's different eschatological schemes, and
the idea of
a big division.
The idea of
a big division is like, is this something that that God's going to do, and we just have hope, or we have knowledge of it through revelation, etc., or is this something that we are bringing about through like our actions or whatever?
Accelerationism of the end times is, it's an insane idea, and I think Zionism in particular is, I think, very funny and is very easy to make fun of and make light of, is because it's a very insane ideology in the 21st century to sort of bring about the apocalypse. And
it short circuits all kind of ethical and moral reflection, because whatever you have to do, I mean, this is true of communism, this is true of like liberalism, neoconservatism, all of these ideologies. There's this thing where like if this is where history is headed, and this goes back to what we were talking about, like the conversion story or whatever, if this is where history is headed, then we can do whatever we want in order to make that happen. And like that's such a horrible thing to get inside your head. Because if that's true, then you can sin, you can do whatever, you know, and that will like, if the Jews are supposed to control the Temple Mount and establish a second temple and kill a red heifer or whatever, like all these weird prophecy things.
Third temple.
Then the third temple. Then whatever they do. Oh yeah. Third temple. Then whatever they do to accomplish that. If I read about it, I'm either gonna be excited because it's happening, or I'm gonna like want them to accomplish it somehow.
Sort of shrug it away, like, you know.
And I might even fight diplomatic or sabotage diplomatic moves that might postpone it. And that's when prophecy belief becomes just a tool of the devil's. I mean, yeah.
Why do you think that Catholics have been sort of protected from the sort of really crazy type of Zionism? Is it because that is the one true faith, or is there some other?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's because Catholicism is true. No, I think a big part of it is we have a
deep-seated hatred for Jewish people.
Oh yeah. Well, there is that, but I think that we have a global faith. And like, even when I was reading about, so the Second Vatican Council had had stuff in there about Muslims and Jews, and that was more I'm not gonna say liberal, but it was clarifying a bunch of stuff. One of which is like the Jews do not have a collective responsibility for killing Jesus, right? And Muslims also believe that the Jews didn't kill Jesus. So there's something we agree on, because, you know, and the other way. But like, so, but I was reading about the creation of that document and how, and there's like, it's a council. So you have all these bishops, and it's like, okay, well, like, what are we going to say about this? And they had to contend with Arab bishops who were very concerned that and made sure that all of the statements were about the Jews and not Israel as a nation state. And that influence of Arab Christians on the Second Vatican Council, making sure that the document was about the Jewish people and not the Israeli state, is one of the things that led to the document being better. But evangelicals in America don't even recognize that there are Arab Christians. They don't care that there are Arab Christians because the Arab Christians are not evangelical. They're either Catholic or Orthodox usually, which is why they didn't care when Bush invaded Iraq, and which led to the eventual wiping out, like de-Baathification, which led to ISIS, etc. All of that just led to the wiping out of Eastern Christianity, which is the oldest Christianity. It's so when you lose that, then you lose so much of Christianity when you lose that history. And then I think
so many old sacred churches in Iraq and Syria were destroyed because of this barbarism. Yeah. And I think that goes back to the original evangelical sort of Protestant heresy. And if you guys had dealt with them back in the day, you wouldn't have to, we tried with the Shia, but didn't work.
Well, the problem is we put Jesuits in charge of fighting it, and they don't fight anything anymore. So
I actually have a really messed up take on this. And speaking of wanting to offend, let's Zionism and the evangelical sort of Protestant, sort of this very insane, very American style Christianity. I find these akin to Wahhabism in Islam. Oh, yeah. And all three of them tend to ally with each other a lot. So Wahhabi oil money, evangelical, donations and big super PACs, funding. Yeah. It all seems to they really seem to complement each other, and they all have this weird sycophancy for regimes in the Middle East, whether they be the Saudi Arabian regime or the Israeli regime, and they seem to sort of prop up these very brutal and violent and very anti-democratic and liberal order regimes in the Middle East. And I find it really fascinating. If you look at some of the leading voices now for peace, if you consider Twitter and Instagram are something to go by, it's a lot of really conservative Christians, either from the Orthodox tradition or from the Catholic tradition. So I don't know if Jackson Hinkle Orthodox or Catholic. I think he's Catholic, right?
I have no idea, but he's I don't know what he actually believes.
He's a bit of a meme. I get it. He's a bit of a provocateur. Yeah. He's self-stylized Christian and communist. I get it.
Please fund my anti-Zionism. You can donate to my anti-Zionism here.
Yeah.
And then, everybody. And 2 years ago, he's like, you can donate to my white supremacist.
No, there's a lot of self-stylized anti-Zionists and anti-war, journalists and propagandists or whatever you want to call them. But a lot of the voices, the more reasonable voices, are coming from the conservative segment in Europe and in Asia and in America. But and this comes to the original question of how does your faith? So when you approach comedy, how does it and your comedy and your activism sort of bleed over into each other, like you said, you don't.
Oh yeah. It's all one thing to me.
So when you criticize Israel, when you make these sort of comedy videos, is it your hope that the Muslims and Jews will tire each other out, and then the Catholics can move in some sort of crusade style?
That's right. The hope is to retake Jerusalem. Right. Yeah. Is to get the Patriarch of the Patriarch of what's his name? I wish I had a podcast guy. I could be like, look it up, whatever, Jamie, whatever. Is
it the short dude with the hood?
No, the Patriarch of Jerusalem. Wait, hold on. Catholic leader of Jerusalem. His name is Pizza Bali.
Right.
Pizza Bali, like a pizza ball or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's his name, which is, yeah. He's he's in charge of the Roman Catholicism in Israel and Palestine. But okay, so for me, like, but like besides everything I've been saying about joy and love and everything, and like being, comedy being like to delighting in something like the current reality and like like reality being good at its core. Like besides all of that, I think that one main way that it informs me is that like my view of history is much longer than most people, like most most Christians in America. I think most evangelicals, most Protestants, a lot of what they see as tradition is like 50 years old. And it's a very invented tradition. And like, so when I think about like relationships between Muslims and Christians, my mind doesn't go to like current like interfaith dialogue stuff, which is like really obnoxious, I think. It goes to like Christians and Muslims like writing to each other like 1,000 years ago. And how did Christians like? I'm very interested in like when Islam spread, like there was no internet. And so it wasn't like, here's this new religion and here's a website where you can explain it.
Here's our Wikipedia.
Instead, it was piecemeal. And so Christians were like, what is this new thing? There's a great book called like A Prophet Has Emerged. And it's like, there's just like a quote from somebody and it's like, who is this person? Who are these people? What's going on? And so it starts with rumors, right? It starts with rumors about Islam and everything, and like misinterpretations of things, and then like trying to say like, okay, well, who are these Muslims? Who are these people? Well, they must be just like these people that we've dealt with, etc.
We're viewed as pagans and or Jews for a while, no?
What's that?
We're viewed as pagans and or Jews for a while.
Well, Jews mainly.
Yeah.
Jews mainly. That you were too Jewish, and that you were part of this Jewish conspiracy, because the Jews would leave Christian areas and go to the Muslim areas. So they were obviously helping you somehow.
Child sacrifice mostly.
Right, the blood libel
stuff.
I think that was that kind of stuff was much later.
It's more 17th,
during like the Black Death and everything.
Yeah, more 14th, 15th, 16th century. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the beginning, like 800s, 900s, that's such an interesting time to me, because very decentralized, compared to now, people writing past each other and everything, but people would like meet for debates. That's where my mind goes. And
so it doesn't go towards Jordan Peterson talking to Muslims, talking at Muslims.
No. And because when you know all of that, like when you learn all of that, when you learn like St. Thomas Aquinas, like when you learn that there are Christian doctrines. Christians are always like Islam is a ripoff of Christianity, right? That's what we always say. And that it's just this heresy that split off from Christianity, whatever. There are Christian doctrines that are formulated through philosophy that we learned from Islam. And so like it came up, like a lot of it came about from discussions with Muslims.
This is not as good as a conversion story, by the way. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, so like,
keep going.
So there is this, so there is this very interesting, and like in these empires, that like there was no democracy, and there was a very thick pluralism where you had like one city would be Muslim, one city would be Christian, but they would all live under this empire. And we look back on that and we see it as this era of intolerance and like wars of religion, etc. But like if you go back before democracy, before liberalism, etc., you had a very like we would never allow Dearborn to become a Muslim city in America. That would be absurd to people. Even just that suggestion is comical. And of course, places in Europe that everyone always freaks out that like a neighborhood or a city is becoming too Muslim. You had that all the time in the Ottoman Empire. You had like the millet system. You had cities that were Christian, and you just had to donate money. You said to pay the jizya or whatever. And it's just a lot less in taxes than we pay now to the federal government. So like what's now in terms of pluralism, it's a very chunky pluralism where it's not pluralism down to the individual person. Where each person gets to decide what religion they are.
No, they're not. It's not meant to denature the individual constitution of individual human beings. No, it's very broad strokes. Sustainable pluralism, unlike the one that's happening in Europe right now. Yes.
And so instead, you have this. Have you read like The Impossible State by Wael Hallaq?
No, I know of this book. I know this book.
Okay, yeah. So that's like top 5 books in my life. Because relating it to Christianity has been very interesting in my thought process, because I think the same process has gone on where you have with Christian nationalism and you have this attempt to make the liberal state Christian, and like the modern nation state Christian. I think you have the exact same thing happening in Israel. I think that is the exact thing that's happening in Israel, and people are not really talking about that. Where like that's the problem. Like people are not criticizing Israel for being too Jewish. Like no, I never hear that. Like it's not like they have rules about like, like from the Torah, like no one talks about that. Like instead it's an ethno state. It's a nation state. And because it's a democracy, like I'm somewhat skeptical of democracy, although I don't know what the alternative is, but my skepticism is like, okay, so how can Israel be a Jewish state and be democratic? Well, the only way is by making sure that Jews are the majority of the population, which means never giving
even the Jews that they want, who think in a particular way. Even diversity of thought cannot exist in even a monoculture population. Democracy, there are some intrinsic failures within democracy that I think I agree with you that there's a skepticism.
Right. So
even the nation state, by the way, just to sort of not to carry the water for you, but I don't think that's the experience that Muslims have. Muslims tend to have a more rosy, eyed sort of view of the past, and I think that has to do with the separation of the church and the state. So since that was imposed on us, we don't gel with the nation state. All of the problems you see in the Muslim world are primarily because you have these disparate groups and tribes and people who speak all these different languages sort of mishmashed into like little boundaries drawn up by the British or the French or the Dutch or the whoever. And I think what the Christian nationalism and Zionism is attempting, trying to reverse engineer the liberal secular state into some sort of Jewish Sharia or Christian Sharia state, is absurd. And you can see the absurdity. It's absurd. You can't have God Emperor Trump or atheist Benjamin Netanyahu apply the laws of the Torah and then have democratic values and have equal citizenship.
You could have God Emperor Trump. You can't have God President Trump.
Right. Sorry. You can't have God President Trump. No.
You could have, which I think things would be much. So I always have wondered, like, what would history have been like if in 1948 Israel still got created, still established or whatever, but they got a Jewish king, like King David II or something, King Solomon II. And what would history have been like? Would they be less antsy about like the population of Palestinians? Would it be like Jordan, which Jordan's foreign population is huge. It's like half the people there are
50%
like from Syria or Palestinian. And there's problems with that, but the problems are not like, oh no, these people are going to come in and like elect a bad, like, no, there's a king. So
do you know what Mencius Smallbug?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So Curtis Yarvin, I found this really fascinating. And the first time I saw this character was on the Tim Dillon podcast. And I was like, I was mesmerized by this funny looking white man talking about a return to imperialism. And I think that experientially for the latter end of the millennials and definitely for the Zoomers, the nation state is kind of over. The internet has sort of flattened the national boundaries and national identities, and sort of if you take the Israel-Palestine as a conflict as an example, it is the most protested, and it is going to be one of the most contentious issue in voting lines in America. But it's a conflict where no American troops are involved on ground. It's worse than Iraq. It's worse than Afghanistan, and it's the internet. That's what it is. Yeah. The internet has now, so American kids and European kids and Asian kids have transcended. So I'll give you an example. You know this guy, Lord.
Well, and just a small point is that this feels very new, but it's actually very old. This transcending of boundaries, which is a good answer to the question about how this informs like how I think about stuff. So, like, yeah. So no, go ahead.
You know this guy, Lord Miles. Is a British Catholic.
Yes, yeah.
I love that guy. He's coming here.
Yeah, he is a throwback to like 150 years ago, like the random like Teddy Roosevelt kind of explorers.
Like he's like T. Lawrence, like Lawrence of Arabia type character.
Yes.
No, he's coming here in a couple of weeks. In the studio.
Oh, nice.
He's going to be with us. Yeah, he's coming.
Is he? Whoa, okay.
Yeah, he's coming from Afghanistan. We talked to him the other day.
That is awesome.
Really beautiful thing.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Inshallah, when he comes on, I'll make sure to connect him with you as well.
What if you have to keep him safe? What if he dies in Lahore? Like you have to, after everything that he's done.
7 trips of Afghanistan doesn't kill him, but
after everything he's done in the most dangerous places,
kills him.
You have to keep him safe. That would destroy Lahore's reputation.
I mean, and Lahore doesn't need to do anything to further destroy its reputation and Pakistan, but but this guy, I mean, there's something really cute about him. The other day,
he's gonna get lung poisoning from like the smog. Like
that's what he says, by the way, that I'm gonna die at 100 years old. I'm gonna slip on a banana peel or something.
Yeah,
it's not gonna be Snake Island or North Sentinel Island or Afghanistan or Sudan. It's gonna be something.
When I was in Pakistan on tour, I had a joke that I did about how people in America were like, you're going to die in Pakistan. And I'm like, I'm not worried. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not worried. I'm at peace with myself and my whatever. I'm okay with death. What I don't want is to die in a dumb way. And it's kind of like food. Like when you're in Pakistan, you don't want to get McDonald's. You don't want to go to Burger King. You want to get local, authentic, traditional Pakistani food. And it's the same thing with death. Like if I'm in Pakistan, I don't want a death that I can get anywhere. Like, falling or slipping or whatever. I want like a good, local, authentic Pakistani death. Like a car bomb or like a drone strike. I want to be assassinated like on stage. That's where you want to be. That's how you want to go.
You want to be drone striked, Anwar Awlaki style, American citizen gets killed, You want
I'll come back.
Yeah. No, but the analogy with the food, I think, applies that you don't want to die in a dumb way. You eat the street food and then you're on the toilet and you're thinking, I don't want to die on this toilet, right? You don't want to die in that sort of ridiculous sort of,
The Elvis way, yeah.
In an Elvis sort of way where your heart gives out because you were constipated or something.
Right.
You want to die in an authentic sort of Pakistani style shootout, Raymond Davis, whatever, some sort of, CIA military contractor.
Lord Miles, you have to save him from that.
Lord Miles. So now he's following us on Twitter. We're following him on Twitter. I try and chat with him once in a while on WhatsApp before he comes and help him coordinate with his schedule. I saw him on Twitter. I saw some sort of it was some sort of Catholic space. He's a Catholic, by the way. And initially I had no idea. I thought it was like a bit of a meme for him. He's like a religious autist, like these new Reddit 4chan type religious autist type kids. I thought, he's sincerely Catholic, and I thought that was really beautiful because he was Twitter, and there was a Twitter space where they were doing Hail Marys and the duas. I don't know. What would you call them?
They were doing the rosary.
They were doing the rosary, and I was like, "What is this Twitter space?" And it said, Lord Miles is in here, and then I opened it. It was just some guy. He's doing the duas, he's doing the prayers, and they're all listening in. And I thought it was adorable that he's genuinely informed by his faith, because when he says that I'm not afraid to die, there's a sort of religious autism, and you know what I'm talking about. The sort of
these are my
wow,
yeah. Actually, there's a Tasby in here
because they're kind of the same thing, right? Yeah, there it is.
The Tasby, yeah.
No, and now because he's sincerely Catholic, I'm trying to figure out if we can get something from British leftovers here, some old Catholic Bible, I need to get him a Catholic gift from the South, from the subcontinent, and I'll try and keep him safe, and I'll give him your love. And,
are you spending the day with him? You're traveling with him and stuff?
No, so we haven't figured it out yet, but what he's doing this time is he's coming from Afghanistan. He's going to cross the Torkham border, and he's going to hitchhike. He's going to hitchhike from there to Lahore, and then he's going to go all the way to Karachi. And from Karachi, he's going to go to Oman, and then he's going to fly to the UK. He's going to go on a shipping cargo. So the thing with him is it's so all spontaneous and last minute, and the guy's a real character. Every day his plan is changing, and he just drops a text and My hope is that we can spend a couple of days with him. It all depends on how hospitable we can be and what we can provide for him here. There's a lot of leftover British as well as Catholic history in Lahore. So I'm hoping we can show him that stuff, and maybe we hang out for a couple of days, inshallah.
So it's a 2-hour drive from Lahore. I just looked it up. So that might be too far. I don't know. But if you go past Sheikhupura, you get to Mariamabad, which is the Catholic, that's the Pakistani shrine. Yeah. Okay.
I know what you're about.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea, actually. We could take him out one day for that.
That's the Pakistani, that's the Marian shrine in Pakistan. So, yeah.
Right. I think
that's an idea.
I think so I was thinking that we take him to some British, he does a lot of the British. I was thinking we take him to, so you know what, the redcoats in Pakistan and in India, I'm sure as well. Major cities have a place called Lal Kurti, Lal red and Kurti as in shirt. So red coat will always be a neighborhood where they used to stitch the red coats, right? Because they needed.
Okay.
So I was thinking we take him to one of the Lal Kurtis, and then we get him dressed up as a red coat soldier, and then we take him around British monuments, leftovers, and he does his thing. He does his little meme thing, and but the Catholic stuff now, because I saw him the other day in that Catholic space. Making the rosary, and I felt like, this guy's a serious Catholic. Maybe he deserves to, because there's a lot of Catholic. Unfortunately, now we have a lot of the evangelical sort of crazy sort of American influence. They even made evangelist TV in Pakistan. It's called, it's completely skipping my mind. It's something hilarious. I used to watch it late night with the baptisms and, it's completely skipped my mind. So there's a lot of American money coming in. Unfortunately, the Catholic tradition.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Out.
So I remember I was at the Faisal Mosque in Islamabad, and I went to the bookstore there, and I was like, I have to see what Christian books they have, and it was a lot of evangelical stuff, a lot of right wing, theocratic evangelical stuff. There's a guy, Rushdoony, who was one of the main founders of Dominionism, which is what Mike Pence where Christians are supposed to establish dominion over stuff. And of course, he was like, "This is a brand new idea," and it was 80 years ago. But those were the books they had, and I was like, "What in the world?" Like, and it's probably just whatever they got donated or something, like whoever gave them books, and like how would they know that that's weird? Like, if someone, I guess it would be like, and I have nothing against like the Ahmadiyya, whatever, and I don't want to get into that, but it would be like a Catholic university having an Islam section, and it's all Ahmadiyya stuff, where it's like, okay, great,
they exist, but
just so you know, like that's not like
2,000 years of tradition. Yeah. No.
Yeah, that's
not
good.
Getting
Like
in the weeds with the
like you're going to
stuff,
get a lot of,
but yeah. I love how you're sensitive to Pakistani issues. I just love it.
Yeah.
No, but
I don't want to get canceled
by your insane Pakistani audience. Yeah. No,
that's
but
right.
Speaking of Pakistan, you know that we're going through some tough times right now, and I know you're a clean comedian, so you don't use many choice words. But a few months ago, you hosted a Twitter space with Imran Khan, and one of my colleagues texted me to specifically ask you about this. How does it feel like cheerleading for an ex-prime minister in a South Asian country of 250 million people? Is it insane as an experience? Like, I have no idea. Like, so
it's weird. It crept up on me, and like a lot of things, it happened one step at a time, and then it and then it just got crazy. So yeah, it's weird. And like we talked about earlier, I think, that was before like before you started recording, we were talking about how there's a part of me that whenever I start becoming a brand, I start reacting really like negatively against the brand. I start getting passive aggressive towards it. So like the second I got known for like liking biryani, like, which it's not just that I liked biryani, it's that I used to cook biryani for this like Pakistani disabled guy, and I would mess it up every time, and I have stories and stuff. And like, but people found I like biryani. And like the second that it became like a meme that I like biryani, I was like, I'm never eating it again. I don't even want to look at it. Like, I don't want, it's like, that's not who I am, whatever. The Imran Khan thing is definitely like that, where like I like in the past month, it's become like that, because in the past month, I'm working and like creating content about Israel and Palestine. And there's just like tons of comments that are like, say something about Imran Khan. What about Imran Khan? And I'm like, what do you want me to say about him? He's in prison. What do you want me to like tell him to call me? I don't know. Like,
I mean, considering that you probably, since you can talk to our prime minister, I'm sure you have, Biden's ear.
Netanyahu,
Netanyahu's ear as well, considering you're this international sort of double agent, super spy, comedian.
Sure.
No, but don't you think it's surreal and ridiculous that in 21st century that you are a comedian somewhere in America from North Carolina, and then people have you like trying to push on you this idea that you need to help liberate this ousted prime minister who was clearly ousted in some big international conspiracy, and Jeremy McLellan, you need to figure out.
That's right.
Because that one time you said you liked biryani, and that one time you made that joke about the potatoes in biryani, you better step up to the plate now. It's
that's right.
It's just this insane. How did you find Imran Khan, by the way? Was he?
I think. It's fine.
That was a good move, by the way. That was smart. You don't want the PTI types.
Yeah.
That was really smart.
It's what?
You don't want the PTI types mad at you. That's really smart.
Oh yeah. Well, no,
he's handsome.
It reminds me.
He's handsome for one.
What's that?
He's really handsome. He's a great cricketer.
Yes, handsome. Right. I couldn't see him. It was like audio, whatever. And
it was a Twitter space. So those are kind of
And I was trying to ask him stuff that people I listened to like his past 10 interviews. And so I tried to not ask him about that stuff. Or at least word it differently or whatever. And I got to ask him about the church burnings in Faisalabad. And yeah, so and about like the rule of law in Pakistan, and how minorities require the rule of law in order to feel safe, and so yeah, we got to talk about that, and I was happy about that. I got to I got my Catholic thing checked. And
it was very tragic.
Yeah, no, it was,
since it's come up, the Faizabad thing, by the way. The thing with Faizabad was
I've been there. I've been to St. John's.
Oh wow!
In Faisalabad.
You know what it was? It seems to be that this is my reading of it. That it was some sort of class battle where you had a lot of people.
Of course,
it was a factory town. You had people because a month before the riots.
Yeah, no one's like mad that we believe in the Trinity, and so they go burn churches.
No,
it's like
no.
It's always like they want land or something.
No. Also, there's two elements to the Christian community in Pakistan. Unfortunately, since this come up, I think we should talk about it. The one is that they're sort of viewed as an easy escape, even though I think the Christian community is one of the communities that has the best off in as terms of as a minority in Pakistan, a religious minority, compared to maybe Christians and Sikhs I think have it the best, and I'm saying that with a big pinch of salt. However, I think that there's two reasons why. There's a class issue, and the second thing is that a lot of the oppressed sort of because Muslims in India also inherited the caste system to a certain degree. A lot of the oppressed castes would, even in their Islam, were not maybe as respected as equal citizenry. So, when the Muslims came, they converted to Islam, and then the lower caste when the Christians came, when the
That's what happened with Asia Bibi, was the Christian woman in Pakistan that was charged with blasphemy and stuff. She like drank out of the same water fountain or something as a Muslim, and they were going after her for that. Yeah, and it's like, but that's not an Islamic rule. Like
that's a caste. That's a caste. And
that's like that's a caste rule. Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is the things that I think that will not be resolved in Pakistan until there is a certain amount of. You mentioned rule of law. It's not even for the minorities. You have people escaping Pakistan all the time to pursue lives in Europe and in America, much to the chagrin of Christian nationalists. That's right. But it's before you finish the Imran Khan thing, I really want to get into the weeds with Christian nationalism and Lord Miles.
Oh, please.
Sweet guy as he is. I mean, I want to talk to him about this when he gets here. Lord Miles Rutledge.
Oh yeah.
When he gets here, he's also part of this sort of, and you see a more sort of extreme manifestation of it in Europe with this alt-right sort of zeitgeist. But finish up with Imran, and then what else did you find good about him? Was he just as perfect as they described him?
He was as perfect as I was smitten. Yeah.
You were. I mean, no, it's you and millions of other Pakistani comedians.
Yeah, I know. I wish I had. Yeah, I wish I had more. It's been a while since I thought about it. So, well, one thing I wanted to ask was the situation with the Afghans in Pakistan, and I know that Imran Khan for a long time supported giving them citizenship and everything, and well, he's not in power, and now they're expelling I don't know how many people.
Officially, they've claimed 1.2 million, but I think the numbers are fewer than that because again, the bureaucratic structure required to expel these people is still Pakistani. So Qaid-e-Azam is the most important aspect of the Pakistani economy. Yeah. So you can pay your way through. I think the richer Afghans, the ones that were a bit more established financially, have paid their way through being deported. No, but that again, many of these things with countries in the global South, it's all to do with Western foreign policy. It has to do with the containment of China. It has to do with the Americans constantly wanting a theater of war, because if we develop some sort of stability with Afghanistan, that's a big problem. Because that means the Chinese can trade easily in South Asia and move through the maritime roads. Unfortunately, that there's a lot of politics involved with the deportation of the Afghanis, and I too agree with you that it's genuinely tragic. And Imran Khan was the voice of reason, as much as it pains me to say that he was the voice of reason in that regard.
So as a segue to the Christian nationalism stuff, there's another second part to an answer that I just thought of earlier, that about how Catholicism in general has a sort of global reach, global character to it. Another point to that is that our liturgy is the same all over the world in terms of what the readings are that day. So I don't even know what the readings are today, because you go to mass and you hear them. You don't have to go to mass every day. So but it's a section of the Old Testament, a Psalms, and then a section of the New Testament, whatever. And that's true everywhere. In churches that are not Catholic or Orthodox, it's just whatever the pastor wants to talk about. You can get really they can really focus just on one book or one section or something, and that will become the entire religion, basically. So you'll have with a lot of evangelicals, or some of them, it's less true now. The whole Christian prophecy thing isn't as much true now as it used to be. But back in its heyday, it was you went to one of these churches and the only scriptures they read were the prophecy stuff, which may have even come true later in the Bible, but they still think it's going to happen in the future. And yeah, so et cetera. And whereas you go to a liberal church and the only things they read are the parts about helping the poor or whatever. And then you go to, and whereas Catholicism and Orthodoxy, the liturgy goes through the entire Bible. And eventually, every 4 years, I think you've read the whole Bible if you do the readings every day. And so you are all, number one, you're all on the same page. I know that someone in Pakistan just heard the same reading as I did. And I know that that it was kind of chosen at random. It's not random, but it's spread out and you get the whole thing. And that's very, very different than, and that's one reason why Protestant churches it's a good callback, tend to get Flanderized, where they eventually become even more and more and more ridiculous versions of themselves until they become cults, which, yeah. So
that is the Christian exchange. I think the Christian dilemma is you either end up with snake charmers and people speaking in tongues and faith healers, or you have the option of pedophiles. And I think when weighing these out,
yeah, it's hard to pick. Yeah,
it's hard to pick. But I think if somebody had the sort of sympathy with if somebody ended up on the Epstein logs, they were more likely to be in support of the Catholics. And if somebody was slightly more liberal or secular in their consumptions, and
I don't think so. I think that Catholics are successful enough to have our own island somewhere. I don't think we needed.
I think the wealthier Muslims have also figured out. The Saudis and the Emiratis have also. I've done the Hajj, by the way, so Saudi Arabia can go.
Yeah. That's right.
So I think the Emiratis have also figured out.
You got to get your Hajj done early so that you can criticize Saudi Arabia.
Essentially, that is why we do the Hajj at this point, is because we have to get it
before
over
you
with,
develop your politics. You need to do the Hajj.
Yeah. No, it's very tragic that the way, you know what it is. I think that the illusion of the modern nation state, the reality of the liberal, neoliberal sort of rules-based world order has unraveled so fast post 9/11. It's just one after the other, like a necklace. The pearls are falling one after the other when you break it off. The one scene when the classic when Batman's when Bruce Wayne's mother they pull the necklace, and it's always a classic motif, like the neck. I think it's unraveled so quickly in the past 20 years that people have become so disillusioned, and not even in a cynical sort of way. The throwback to what you said, that this is the natural state of being, that people organically communicate. The internet just sort of accelerated the rate and the depth of the conversation that we can have, and also I think the English language allows for, because this is the sort of universal language right now. So if anybody has access to the internet and to English, I think you can relate to and communicate with Christians and Jewish brethren and Muslim brothers all over the world, and you can associate and relate to each other on common ground, and you don't have to sort of become this cartoon version of yourself to be more accepting towards Muslims,
and you become
Christians.
aware of like non-Zionist Jews. You become aware of like just all different kinds of people.
I've spoken to Dr. Zachary Foster. He's a great scholar from Princeton. He's very anti-Zionist. Dan Cohen, he's a journalist. We've spoken to him a couple of times. We helped him do a screening here in Lahore and Lums for his documentary, Killing Gaza. No, but it's the idea is basically that you don't have to bend over backwards to try to accommodate. And I always found this really weird, because I'm from a particular belt in Punjab, which was exported a lot of people to the UK and in Europe in general back from the 60s to the early 90s, because there was a lot of economic sort of ingress in Europe where they needed labor from South Asia and everywhere, and because the belt that I'm from in Punjab served in the British military during the colonial times, so we were given visas quicker and sort of as a sort of a generational hurrah.
Sure.
I always felt really strange about how European society was expected to bend over backwards and sort of, I mean, not to say that it wasn't their policies that forced them to to import this labor and to import this, to have this sort of influx of this, this neo-slave labor class that eventually first ghettoized, then eventually started to integrate, and integrate in a weird sort of way where they didn't become European, but they, sort of dragged European culture.
I'm listening. Just 1 second.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. What I don't get is America has a sort of, I think, a much more bird's eye sort of view to this, because they've simply geographically they're so far away, and because they've had their foray into colonialism is a newer project. They haven't had the sort of influx of immigration, of just blanket. America has choice immigration. They get the doctors, they get the engineers, they get they get the best of the lot. And I mean,
I have a friend who thinks that the reason I like Muslims is because America only lets the good ones in, and so there's this whereas like, and he's British. So he thinks that like, Britain, and it's true that like Pakistanis in America are much higher class, much more well educated, etc.
But then that's actually that's actually the UK is a very class oriented society as well. And then what it actually speaks to is the fact that your friend doesn't like poor people.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I mean, nobody does, but
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I mean, poor people don't like poor people.
That's why they're poor. They're not likable. That's the reason they're poor.
And they don't get the Calvinist sort of Christian ethic of pulling yourself up by the bootstraps.
That's right.
Finding a job flipping burgers.
That's how I grew up. I was raised Calvinist.
Of course you were. Of course you were. The South Carolina, straight face sarcasm, then Calvinism, and now Catholicism. I love it.
That's right.
I love it. That sort of. As an American, you talk to a lot of European Christians as well. I'm sure, like you mentioned, your friend and their distaste with the. What I want is that Europe is clearly trying to resolve its demographic issues right now. You see a new generation of people anywhere from their 40s down to like even teenagers, young Generation Z kids online. They're discovering, white nationalism, Eurocentrism, even Christianity. Some of them even gone off the deep end, rediscovering their paganism or whatever. You see all these kinds of trends on the internet, and they all seem to have one common thread, which is bodybuilding. But and it's endearing for us as for me at least, viewing them from here, and I don't mind them, rediscovering their culture. I think it's perfectly fine.
Sure.
It might actually be. I would probably get along better with them than the more cosmopolitan sort of London, New York, sort of California, sort of white people. How do they resolve themselves and their
Did you say you don't have a problem with them? Did you say rediscovering their culture?
Yeah, I think it's perfectly fine. Them,
Yeah.
yeah. I think they would get along with them better. Like you said, conservative Muslims would get along better with these conservative Christians as opposed to, that is the case, by the way. No, but I just think that this should happen in a way that it shouldn't resolve itself violently. That is my only concern, and I think that even if, and then this is a cynical take, and I speak from a place of privilege where I don't have to leave Pakistan to look for, work or to search for a better life, alhamdulillah. But I think that even if they were to stop migration flows, I mean, I don't mind if that's what makes them happy, as long as they stop with the forever wars and the interference. As long as we can, free trade, cool, sure. Free flow and exchange of ideas, nice. If they stop with the cultural imposition that they do on us and the wars that they put on us, like in the Muslim world or the third world in general, I have no problem going to Spain as a tourist and, looking at one of the biggest Muslim failures in 1400 years. I don't mind that. But at the same time, like I've been to Spain and I get why they get annoyed. So I'm very conflicted. Their right to be annoyed at the Muslim migrations, I don't know if it's a fair thing for them to be annoyed at, considering they've enjoyed the luxuries of the policies that have exploited Muslims and the Muslim lands. But at the same time, I also understand, like, it wasn't these people. Like, the young...
Right, it wasn't these,
Yeah, the young white teenager right now in Europe, he doesn't have a job either,
Yeah.
He's as much... So, like, Americans, so the dollar being the pole position currency in the world, it messes with the working class, and you should know this in North Carolina. And the North Carolina is a working class, isn't it? Isn't a working class state? It's not a very big sort of industrial sort of state, right?
No. It's yeah.
So
where I live, Charleston is very much like port, like cosmopolitan, almost port city. Right. But it's a these I think are the best cities in America are blue cities and red states. So like
so Austin and Texas, and then
Austin, and Pittsburgh. These are the places where it's a city, there's culture, there's life, there's diversity, etc. But there's conservatives around it, and there's a conservative past, and so like the liberals in these cities, for the most part, Austin, I don't know. But in Charleston, at least, the liberals in Charleston are very sort of aware of the existence of conservatives. It's not a bubble. And so there's constant like interaction. It's very different from like LA, where people are like, well, how could anyone vote for Trump, et cetera? Like it's like, okay, why, like, and there's like, if you live in Charleston, you know why. And so, so in terms of Europe, I'm not European. But again, like, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but like, what is the fear with immigration? One fear is crime, and sort of people behaving badly. So like, if you let people in, what will happen, right? Well, one thing that can happen is the people who come in will do bad things. It will impact your life in a negative way, somehow. So they will do things to they will litter, they will not take care of stuff, they will trash everything, they will, sleep outside. I don't know. Or they will hurt you.
It's also the smell, I think.
Sure. But like that's a sort of reasonable concern for like, that's a concern that every area ever in history has had a concern about, which is people might move here, people might move in and do bad things, right? And I think that's legitimate. That is like a matter of law and order, of screening people, whatever, kicking people out when they break the law, whatever you want to do. Okay. What makes it new, like what I think is new, is there's a concern number one, the people will come in and vote a different way, which goes back to what we were talking about, where fear of demographic change, like primarily because of democratic politics. And like that is, I mean, that's then it's like democracy is causing the the restrictions. When it comes to people coming in might change the culture of the city. So Christians worry that if Muslims come in, that that things will become more Muslim, or people will stop being Christian or something. It might be the opposite, where Muslim immigration causes people to like me, become more competitive almost, and or it might be that people coming in being Muslim might make like people's kids more aware of options. Like the kids might convert to Islam eventually, and or at least hold to Christianity in a sort of ironic way, where like you're aware of. I think Charles Taylor defined secularization as there not being a default, where if in a secular society you can have whatever religion you want, but there's no default religion that everyone has. And so the loss of a default, even if everyone's Christian, the loss of a default, just being aware of the existence of other people, knowing that yours is one among many, that even if you hold the belief, it's one among many, people worry about that effect on kids. Just like people worry that the LGBT stuff will, at the very least, make their kids aware of options, or maybe not even options like it's a choice, but like options that like there are other things out there, and being straight is one thing among many. It's not just like the nature of reality, whatever. So I don't know how I would vote if I lived in Europe. What I do think is that there needs to be like the part, like those, as far as all those reasons, the part where I would really strongly disagree with is the idea that that simply having Muslims or other religions around you will lead to a watering down of your culture or your faith. That doesn't necessarily happen. You have cities like, I mean, just take New York, for example. Is there a watering down of the different ethnicities in New York? No, there's sections of New York that are like Chinatown, where people are Chinese. There's sections that are like Black. There's Harlem. There's sections that are, and so if you allow that to happen, then there's no problem. Like there's no issue with that. You can still have very vibrant cultures. Another thing I would, and this is the last thing I'll say before I let you talk. What I will say is that culture is not something that you can design from like the top down. And one thing I really disagree with, like Christian trads, and I'm somewhat of a trad, technically, I think. But I think that like tradition or culture comes about because, or in at least in history, has come about because people are trying to do things that are beautiful. They're trying to make food that tastes good. They're trying to make food that like reminds them of things that they love or people that they love, and just doing things that they think are good. That's how, and from that, if you are a anthropologist who goes there, you can see all those things and you can organize that into a hierarchy or into a system of thought and write a book and publish it on that culture, et cetera. I think something really bad has happened where everyone is now an anthropologist of their own culture, where instead of focusing on what's good or what's beautiful, and this is very much like a second generation thing. Like, for example, cultural appropriation. That's a thing that well, you're in Pakistan, so you're shaking your head. Pakistanis in America, or second generation Pakistanis in like other places who feel disconnected from their culture.
Sorry for both the smell and the cultural appropriation. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
On behalf of all expatriate Pakistanis.
Yeah, they will. If you like, if I go to like a Pakistani event and like, I'll usually bring like a kurta, like in case but like if there have been a couple times where I've been the only one wearing a kurta at like this Pakistani event, and I'm like, oh geez, like I'm the whitest person here. But
no, there's nothing scarier than a white Muslim, message. You know,
that's right. Yeah. So, but having someone like, but when you're in Pakistan, all the Pakistanis are like, you should appropriate our culture because our culture is great. This food tastes good. This shirt is beautiful. This clothing is beautiful. They are referring to transcendental things like this is good, this is beautiful, this is true, etc. Whereas second generation people who are insecure and they are out of the culture, they're in this third weird limbo thing. They're not accepted in either whatever. They see those things not as referring to transcendentals, but as like badges of membership in their identity. And the same exact thing has happened with Catholics, and like where like Catholics will like love the Latin Mass, for example. I love it. I love it because it refers to those things that are true and good and beautiful. But a lot of people love it because it like feels more like trad or something. And like it feels more authentic or traditional. And what they end up with is this like cargo cult of objects and things and beliefs that are sort of cobbled together from times that they think were better. And they think that that's what made those times better. But it's not magic. Latin is not a magic language that like makes things happen, that like you have to say it in Latin or whatever doesn't happen. Like like that's not true. Like it's just this like sort of throwback thing. So there is this I think that sort of micromanagement of your own culture is very because your culture did not develop that way. That's not how you got here. You got here through interactions. Like if white people made like a Bollywood movie that was like, Indians, people in India, or not people in India, but like Indians in America would be really upset, right? But Bollywood was created, but Bollywood was created because someone saw like French plays and movies and wanted to have that, but with Hindu gods. He saw like a thing, and it was a movie of like the life of Jesus, I think. And whoever like started Bollywood, it was the life of Jesus, and he wanted that, but with Hindu gods. And so he appropriated French movie Catholic culture and made it Indian. And so like, yeah, that's how things got the way they are now. So I think people should chill out about culture. I think people should just like, culture develops, and it develops because of interactions, and it develops because they are when you interact with a different culture, you then have a conversation about those transcendental things, like what's beautiful, and then you end up mixing stuff, and then people get mad at you on Twitter and call you a colonizer. So,
a white colonizer, right? No, the transcendental values. I think something that to add to it. There's a Hadith tradition where it is mentioned that Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. So there's this idea about creating transcendental beauty with the patterns, the architecture, the clothing designs, the food, the just artistic expression. I think it's very It's a common motif in both the Catholic as well as the Islamic and most traditions, I'm sure. Most faith traditions, I think that's the way humans express themselves. There's a lot to unpack with what you said. So we started off with Christian sort of, European rediscovery and how cultural growth happens and how it ought to happen. And what you're suggesting is that there is a sort of organic interplay between, no culture originates from anywhere, in all honesty.
Yeah.
Culture is basically a snapshot of a particular time and place. For that, it's very temporally and spatially, isolated. And if you try to artificially,
and you don't have to apologize for it. So,
right.
you don't have to, if you find something beautiful, you don't have to apologize for that, because of that. You don't have to feel, especially white people who are you don't have to feel, guilty about the fact that you find European stuff beautiful and you find other stuff not, because
that's fine.
How you developed. Yeah,
that's perfectly fine. Yeah. No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But the counter argument, and I'm not even playing devil's advocate. This is genuinely what I think is that you're talking about not trying to micromanage and sort of orchestrate culture in a way that it gets preserved in a very specific window of time. Because it ends up looking almost like cosplay, and there is an element of cosplay with a lot of the trad sort of Christian, and watching it from the third world is hilarious, by the way. Plate armor and cosplaying and all this goofy sort of. You have the razor blade clubs with the big mustaches and the big beards. They're really funny to us when the Europeans and the whites do this.
It's a while ago I had the idea that the alt-right is post-colonial whiteness, where the same thing that happened to colonized cultures happened to white people. It was self-imposed, but there was still this mass forgetting of our pasts, our cultures, our traditions, and we all just ended up white. And
which is insane because you are McLellan, you are Scottish, right?
Yeah. But I don't, Scottishness it's not I don't know what, I mean, being from the South is probably much more determinative, right, for me than being some sort of Scottish person or something. But so because of that, there's this desire to recreate this pan whiteness almost
from 60s commercials. From home appliance commercials.
From that, or from if you're depending on how racist you are is how far back you go. If you're really into Norse stuff, even though you're
Hyperborea type, nutcase type stuff.
Yeah.
Raw milk, raw eggs, raw meat, liver, the whole shebang.
All of that is that's
trichinosis, salmonella.
It's similar to Kwanzaa, where Black people who have it's white Kwanzaa. It's where Black people who, because of white people, were detached from their local places in Africa, ended up not from a specific place in Africa, but just Black.
Oh God!
Right?
Have you seen? So, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off. Have you seen the Hebrew Israelites? Why do they dress up like Power Rangers, man? It's
insane. And then they yell at you and you're in Washington D.C. and they start trying to debate with you and stuff. It's great. Yeah.
No, those are my favorite. I discovered them when I was a teenager, and I thought it was genuinely insane that they dressed up like Power Rangers and no, they dress up like Shredder. They look a lot of them look like Shredder from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Shredder. Yeah,
because it's this weird. So it's really funny to see this sort of cosplay coming out of whites. They're associating trad white behavior or European or Christian style behavior, and they're getting their cues from Fallout video games.
That's right.
It's such a mind-numbing experience to watch it from the third world. And why don't you just refer back to your actual cultural identities in Europe and you're right. Yeah. They've sort of self-colonized. It's almost white face for white people. And talking about brown face for brown people, you know that the female Aziz Ansari, I'm forgetting her name, the one that had the one that ruined The Office, the Steve Carell Office at the end, What was her
What, Mindy
name?
Kaling?
I hate that.
Oh, you hate her? Okay.
She had no, as a brown person, I think I have the number one right to hate her.
Yeah. Okay.
She had this
Yeah.
thing called Dear Gods. No
Okay.
Hindu talks like that.
Yeah. Interesting.
It was brown face for white people.
Interesting.
And it was
Yeah,
so
yeah.
weird. And similarly, it just seems like a lot of this.
Like instead of saying "Dear God,"
Yeah.
she would say "Dear Gods."
That's not how Hindus are fairly monotheistic in their approach. Like
That would be like a Muslim saying like "OMA," like instead of "OMG," like oh my Allah. Yeah.
That's so it's so weird and uncanny
Yeah.
valley and alien and
Yes.
no, completely.
It is.
The white traditional stuff, like the Norse stuff and the raw milk, and I get it. It's funny when it's limited to memes. But when you start electing like grifters like Nigel Farage and Geert Wilders, and I can't believe that these guys don't see that these guys are grifters.
Well, because that is the I mean, it like he's just the white Gaddafi. I mean, he's like trying to recreate this sort of pan. But for him, it's this pan white thing, and like his view of. I mean, even if you go back to like the 50s, like there's this attempt sometimes to, well, things were better in the 50s, or I was happier in the 50s, whatever. And so I need to do things that people in the 50s did. And that will make things good or something. When that might not have been why the 50s were good or what, and like, it's very much like a cargo cult mentality of I'm going to do these sort of magic things and then somehow like bring back some sort of golden era or something. I don't know.
It's a lot of this.
But yeah, as far as elections, like where this project of because there can be like a very informal rivalry between I don't really think all like racism is bad. Like people who are, especially like as a comic, like where we get together, there's a bunch of different races of people, and we all make fun of each other.
No, this is hilarious. Of course,
it's all racial stuff, right? Those kind of discussions and those kind of jokes and stuff take on a very different meaning and nature if we were all supposed to elect someone to like be in charge of the group. Then it becomes like, then this sort of rivalry, competition, even like competition between Christianity and Islam or whatever, like all of that's healthy if it's decentralized, if it's just natural, social, whatever. But once you're like, oh, I'm going to put Nigel Farage in charge of like what skin color the people have and what the average skin color looks like in England, like that's very, that's a very dark road. And it gets to where like that, as far as like the nature of the liberal nation state, and importing old ideas into the nation state, thinking that it fits. That's actually how the Holocaust happened. The Holocaust didn't happen because people got so anti-Semitic they suddenly started killing people. Like, which is the lesson I think people have taken from the Holocaust. Never again means let's stop each other from hating and whatever. No, I mean Zygmunt Bauman, who's a Polish philosopher or sociologist, wrote a great book called Modernity and the Holocaust, and it was all about how it was just the nature of the state that created the situation, and then like the mystification of the state with German idealism, like that's what created the Holocaust. Like that's and none of that has changed. Like we are in the exact same conditions for Holocausts like now. You're seeing that in Israel, where like it's the exact same logic. And so like people have maybe gotten less hateful. I don't know. At least they feel like they have. But it's the exact same conditions.
No, it's really fascinating that you see actual.
I have to go pretty soon, so
No, it's perfectly
just
fine.
FYI.
You've been more than cooperative, and you've been more
Yeah, cool.
coherent than most, Daily Wire types
Nice.
and PragerU and conservative punditry and that whole reinventing Europeanism class. I think you've been a better champion for Catholic ideals, for the Catholic tradition than I've seen, and the fact that it's coming out of comedy. A lot of the reasonable, a lot of the reasonable sort of thinking that you get, a lot of the reasonable sort of journalism that you're getting online is coming out of comedy, and that to me is insane.
I think it's because I was talking with my friend Jason about this a couple days ago about how you know the midwit meme where the intellectual bell curve where the guy at the top is the midwit. So Seinfeld said that comedians are smart dumb guys. That's the definition of what it means to be a comedian. Where we're either really smart or really dumb, and it's a combination of the two, but it's not an average of the two. So it's like that meme where like a comedian, I think, at least a good comedian, there's something that like prevents him from being the guy at the top, where we are either the guy on either side, or some mutant combination of the two. But we are not. So like hopefully we can see through like BS, and we're very skeptical, and because like humor is a good BS detector. If you can make a joke about something, then that sort of opens up like a window where you can maybe see that like, oh, that might be a weak point there in the person's argument and stuff. So yeah, I think it can help a lot, as long as you're not just because like that's the midwit thing to do. The midwit comedian is someone who has points they want to make and then is trying to make them funny, and that's unfortunately that's a lot of the people who are successful in at least in late night or like the Daily Show kind of
normies
comics.
Normies will always populate most of the world.
Always rule the world.
As it says in the Quran, "Wallahu ghalib amri walakinna akthar an-nas la ya'lamun." Allah is a master of His affairs, but a majority of people will never know. A majority of people will always be normies, and I think you've summarized it quite well over there. अब जेरमी भाई अपने कलमा पढ़ने के लिए तैयार हैं इंशाल्लाह ताला. जेरमी भाई आपको मजबूर तो नहीं कर रहा कलमा पढ़ने के लिए? Is nobody forcing you to take the shahada? Are you ready to take the shahada?
No one yet.
All right. So repeat after me. No, Jeremy, you've been an absolute pleasure.
All right, yeah, thank you so much
for joining us, and
it's a lot of fun.
We can keep up this.
Yeah, stay in touch.
Just last question: Can you slip something in for an audience who stuck around, like in Urdu, something about Imran Khan, something ridiculous? You're a comedian. Tell us a joke. Something in Urdu. Just slip something in. Just debase yourself in front of us. Dance, white man.
क्या आप एक चाय की प्याली पियेंगी? So like,
मैं चाय की प्याली नहीं पीऊंगी क्योंकि मैं मर हूँ. You completely ruined the. That's fine. Yeah. So long live Imran Khan. Islam Zindabad. Pakistan Zindabad. You know the drill. So can you tell the people where they can follow you and your next tour dates for Lahore?
Oh, just Google Jeremy McLellan and follow me on social media. I post shows there. I'm most active on Twitter because Facebook keeps locking me out if I say something about Palestine. So right now it's Twitter and Instagram. What's that?
I wonder why Mark Zuckerberg is doing that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Let me know your next tour dates for Lahore, Islamabad, Karachi, Sialkot, whatever, because that's a majority of your gigs for the next 10 years, inshallah.
That's right, inshallah. All right.
I'm messing with you. Thank you, brother.
Cool. All right, man. All right, thanks a lot. See you. Bye.
Allah Hafiz.
Yep. Allah Hafiz.